think the big city investments are the right priority, but maybe mention two things on the cost side that have to do with getting more landlords to convert more of their space so that it's suitable for tech occupancy. And by the way, one of the places we haven't really talked about is the rest of the Brooklyn waterfront, where you've got in total 18 million square feet of industrial space, a lot of which is heavily underutilized and really needs to be, they're the next 20-year projects, but hopefully they're the projects that can get done faster. So what you can do is, number one would be a zoning incentive that allows mixed use. But one of the more innovative tools that have been used in the last few years is the idea of actually requiring a covenant. So you take a landlord that owns industrial space, and in exchange for a partial rezoning, so they get some residential, they can then house their tech workers and cross-subsidize the capital investment that's required. They have to covenant to maintain the rest of their space as light industrial, office, innovation. It's been used in a couple of rezonings, and I think its time is due. But the second thing is just, again, on the cost side, finding ways to finance improvements, and the best way to do that is always to invest in infrastructure. So again, on the Brooklyn waterfront, next to the Navy Yard, even downtown Brooklyn, investments the city can make that improve the quality of the overall neighborhood are also investments that limit the landlord's costs and support retail.
Great. Jed?
So yeah, I mean, on a micro level, I think, and I'm not a huge proponent of government activity generally, but if you look at the situation up and down North Brooklyn, you take Williamsburg as a prime example, right? This is an absolutely teeming place, growing in every way you could possibly want to talk about. And there's no creation. There would be no better place to add this kind of office space that we're talking about than Williamsburg. You've got hundreds of thousands of people who, if you made space available, would go and live there. They'd would start working there. They'd start businesses there. They'd stop clogging up the L train. I mean, they'd walk to work. They'd bike to work. I mean, in every way, this makes sense. But if you're an individual landlord there, it's totally irrational for you to think about any kind of commercial activity, right? Unless you can take a big picture, long-term view and recognize the positive externalities that come with this kind of commercial development that we're talking about, and you're just worried about feeding your family or selling your one building that you own for the most amount of money, which is what you're gonna rationally do, all you're thinking about is building condominiums, okay? And that's a problem, and I don't totally know what the solution is, but it's a real problem for neighborhoods like that. And I think government needs to think long and hard about a way to compensate people for those positive externalities that could come from other things.
So like an FAR bonus for office space?
That would be one tool. That would be one tool. On a more macro level, and I think Mike Bloomberg really got this right, ultimately all we have here are people, right? Whatever business we're running, all we have are people. And as a city, what we're really doing is competing for people with all the other cities in the world at every level of people's decision-making metric, right? You want to go to college, you're going to make a decision about where you're going to college. You want to go to grad school, you make a decision about where you're going to do that. You leave school, you make a decision about where to take a job. You start a family, are we going to stay in the city, or are we going to go to another city, or are we going to go to the suburbs, right? At every moment in time, cities are competing for people. And all the policies we're talking about today are a little bit irrelevant, right? If we continue to keep the city safe and make our schools better and build parks and do things like that, New York City will continue to attract the world's smartest and most energetic and most driven people, and that's ultimately what these companies want, is people. And I think that's probably dramatically outweighs all of the real estate policy issues that we've been talking about.
Perfect.